AEONs, the elusive and all-encompassing beings of Honkai Star Rail that set the rules of the cosmos, or rather, engage in proxy wars to wrestle control over the cosmos from each other, with each path clashing and battling for supremacy, which results in fallout so extreme that aeons fall, others assimilate other aeons, and some aeons even ascend during the chaos. And as our trailblazing story continues to play out, we learn more and more about the aeons and the paths they represent. But according to what we know now, what are the aeons? Where do they come from, and what do they do? Well, these are the questions that have led me on my grand undertaking of explaining each and every single Aeon in Honkai Star Rail. And for today's subjects, we have the Aeon that started one of the two biggest disasters in the cosmos, and the Aeon responsible for our Trailblazer story as a whole. So without further ado, this is Honkai Star Rail Aeon Ascensions Explained. Okay, so the way we're going to do this is the same as always. I go in alphabetical order to explain how every Aeon ascended, what they do, how they interact with other Aeons, and what this means for the universe as a whole. And today's subject is none other than the Sand King, the Swarm Author, the Imperator Insectorum himself, Tezzeronth the Propagation. And even though this Aeon was short-lived by Aeon standards, since they are immortal after all, they were the single cause of the swarm disaster and later prompted the ascension of Nanook. But of course, that much is obvious. The little known fact of this Aeon is how they ascended, because as the database states, before ascending to Aeonhood, Tazzy was the last of the Coleoptera that ruled their land, and ascended to Aeonhood out of an intense sense of loneliness. Yes, no imaginary tree, no miraculous event, just a bug got lonely one day and became a celestial being. So I guess Aha's worm sounds a lot more normal now, doesn't it? But going back to Coleoptera is just a fancy way to say beetle, by the way. So odds are Tazzy was a literal bug before ascending. The humanoid part that looks like it's holding a baby of some sort seems to be unrelated to the origins of the Aeon. But going back to the ascension, as we've seen with other Aeons, they tend to ascend in response to a problem, with their path being the answer to that problem. Aha answered the void with joy, Nanook answered the chaos of Rupert and the swarm disaster with destruction and purging, and the utter unbridled wanton destruction chaos that happened during the Dusk Wars that were so bad that the history fictionologist removed it from history was answered by the order, preservation, permanence, equilibrium, and veracity. Which all makes sense if you consider the origins of veracity, since it's a clear outlier here. Every Aeon wanted to counter the chaos with their concept, but Ouroboros, being the Leviathan they are, just continued to consume and eat everything. So bringing this all back to Tazzy, they responded to loneliness by becoming their own family, and replicating again and again and again, creating their own brothers and sisters, children, and so on. And since Aeons cannot, for one reason or another, stop themselves from walking the path they represent, Tezzeronth continued to self-replicate indefinitely and infinitely, and their replications could replicate. So even though Tazzy doesn't seem to be very strong of an Aeon and has no human pathstriders besides the Iron Cavalry, but they came in much later, the propagation walked their own path. Tazzy created a path and fueled it by creating progeny to be their own pathstriders and emanators. Scarabaz was quite literally bred to be an emanator of Tezzeronth. So before long, the Sand King had produced an unstoppable army with unimaginable numbers that grew at exponential rates. And this many beings spawning into existence means they needed to eat, which directly leads us to the swarm disaster, an insurmountable army of bugs that no world had a chance of surviving. And during this conflict, as the swarm spread, Ouroboros stepped in and saw a meal, opening up their giant maw and consuming multiple heirs of Tezzeronth and countless worlds with them in a conflict that affected 2/3 of all life in the cosmos. Ouroboros engaged in a fierce battle with Taziron, and from what we know, there was no winner. Well, besides Aha, of course, because odds are this Aeon watched everything from afar and waited for the opportune moment to play a prank on Ouroboros that resulted in their downfall. But either way, Taziron remained with fewer numbers, but still ever increasing numbers, until an unexpected coalition of 6 Aeons made an alliance and Klapoth swung their giant celestial hammer again and again, diluting the power of this Aeon until they were too weak to fight back, even trying to bargain by offering up their replication abilities. Though I don't think they could do this even if they tried, because again, Aeons can't deviate from their path, but the offer was rejected anyway, and the Cosmos had enough. And in the end, the beaten and broken Taziron was sealed in multiple pieces of amber, and the remaining progeny scattered around the cosmos, a far cry from the threat they used to be. Sure, worlds like Glamoth were ravaged by the remnants of the swarm, but due to the Aeon being sealed, they had a fighting chance and won. And that is just about everything we know about Taziron. So now is where we get to talk about one of the more confusing Aeons in the game, none other than the Aeon of Finality, Terminus. And though we don't have a storied history of how Terminus works like we do with Tazzy, we do have some breadcrumbs that allow us to draw some conclusions. For example, according to Dahlia, which is already a bad sign, but that's all we got, Terminus is a 1,000-armed god that splits into black cats and travels backwards through time, giving prophecies of the future, until they reach a certain point and put themselves back together again, ascend, and do it all again. Very much like Fu Li, this Aeon exists in a bootstrap paradox, spawning their own existence. And the reason why they do this is for reasons we can glean from their interactions with Elio, because it is only through Terminus that Elio can write the script. You see, the way the script works is that Terminus shows Elio the future and the various what-ifs that can happen. And all of these what-ifs are the failed futures where the universe was destroyed and Fu Li recreated everything through memories and everything reset. And Elio cherry-picks the endings he wants from all of these failed futures to find one that saves the universe and rewrites the fate for all of his Stellaron hunters. Or at least, that's the goal. And that was his proposal that convinced the Stellaron hunters to join, rewriting their fate. So in order to bring about all of these futures at the same time, a script must be created in order to map out what needs to happen and reach the proper endings. Very much like an RPG. Put simply, Terminus lets Elio look at the different save files of the universe from all the failed runs, and Elio picks the route that achieves all of the endings he wants to happen. So from this we can see that Terminus does what they do to avoid a catastrophic end, but they can't really help directly due to moving backwards through time, which is why they have emanators like Elio. In essence, what the Finality presses forwards and backwards for is for a new beginning, which is also the meaning of Nova. Thus, Aeronova being a new beginning in the cycle of the timelines of Amphorius, Nova Flare being a new beginning for a character in the meta of gameplay, and Himiko Nova being a new beginning for Himiko since she has so many issues with her past and wanted badly to leave it all behind. So odds are this is her closure for her trauma in playing Arcadia. Hoyo really likes to use my name, but that's besides the point. Point is, Terminus wants a new beginning to escape the cycles of Fu Li resetting everything, but can't influence the universe themselves. So they give info to mortals in a way to guide people to changing destiny. More proof of this through the fact that Terminus is a 1,000-armed god, which is a common depiction of a Bodhisattva, an ascended being who has reached enlightenment, but instead of entering nirvana stays behind to help mortals get to where they are. Which gets even more sus when you realize that Fu Li, as the master of Anasrava, has a Pure Land, very much like Guan Yin, the most notable Bodhisattva in Pure Land Buddhism. And if that isn't crazy enough, Bodhisattvas are known for working together. So if Fu Li and Terminus both represent these enlightened beings that are looking back trying to save mortals, Terminus is delivering messages to guide and save humanity, and every time humanity fails anyway and gets destroyed, Fu Li swoops in as the safety net, hitting the reset button and giving humanity one more chance. It just so happens that both Aeons that have heavy ties to Pure Land Buddhism work in perfect unison, ascending in a cycle that spawns themselves into existence every single cycle. But until we get more about this, I can't really go any further. But I did make an entire video connecting Terminus and Fuli to Buddhism. And that is how Terminus influences the cosmos and how they ascended. Again and again and again. Because this is Honkai Star Rail Aeon Ascensions Explained. The 4.3 live stream was earlier today and I've probably already reacted to it, but as of right now, I am hyped to see what can happen. Does Stephen Lloyd show up? Are we getting more Leviathan info? Does Blade's Marstruck condition get better because of the Torn Scroll eating Shuhu? Either way, I'll be dropping a video on it very soon. But now that I think about it, next episode will be the last video of Aeons Explained. Wow, it's just Xipe and Yaoshi left. Thank you guys so much for coming along on this journey with me. We still have a lot to learn, and the end of this series does not mean we are done in any regard. We still have a lot of things to learn, and most of all, more discoveries to make. And I am loving it. But what do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace, y'all.